Hey guys, Yankee here, and today I'm going to be giving my thoughts on Tenchi Muyo OVA 3, Episode 5. So, last episode we ended on a pretty big cliffhanger. Mihoshi's brother has shown up to basically get Mihoshi back from Tenchi, who he thinks is a villain, and he sent a bunch of people to go attack all the members of the Masaki house, right? That's our big cliffhanger. This episode opens with Mihoshi's brother freaking out because Tenchi and Mihoshi have not shown up yet. And then, all of a sudden, Ryoko inside Ryo-Ohki show up to attack the Chobimaru, the ship that he's in. And then, the worst part of this episode, probably the worst part of this OVA, all the fights that they set up in the cliffhanger for last episode are just like off-screened. We get brief glimpses of them. We get a quick look at, was it Washu versus the big guy? I don't know any of those guys' names, by the way. We barely see anything from that. We just see Washu standing there as he tries to fight her, unable to use whatever his power is. And then we see a quick shot of him defeated, and then her like standing over him. Terrible. And then we do get to see a tiny bit of Sasami fighting Mashisu, which was okay. But we only see it briefly. We got a lot of stuff we're covering in this episode, so we just sort of breeze past that. Everybody's captured, and then we start setting up the Mashisu is in love with Misao thing, and that's what the rest of this episode is really about. Before we get to that, though, we do get a brief second of Z just sort of hanging out wherever he is, watching this whole thing go down. But we only see him for a second, and then it's back to Mashisu and Misao's love story episode. So Ryo-Ohki this whole time is just destroying the Chobimaru. Ryoko's just laughing it up. Meanwhile, everybody that was at the Masaki house, including the people they defeated and captured, are hanging out, having a picnic, watching Ryoko just tear the ship up, which is pretty funny. This episode overall, not my favorite, but like stuff like that I find really fun, where it's like, you have the people that came to attack everybody sitting there like, they're gonna kill us, we know things that we shouldn't, we know that Sasami is here on Earth alive, this isn't good. Meanwhile, Seto and like Washu are just hanging out, having a picnic, getting people food and stuff. It's funny. Good stuff. Also, episode started with Misao freaking out because Mihoshi hasn't shown up yet. We get an explanation for that. She got a phone call and was just off hanging out in Washu's lab when everything went down. And this is probably, like, we've had some GXP show set up throughout this, but it hasn't been, like, a big deal. It's like, yeah, I got a call from Amane. She said something about bringing a pamphlet for GP Academy. It was pretty in your face, this one, and so I got a chuckle out of that. So, Mihoshi, not going to see Misao. She's hanging out on the ship having a picnic, trying to figure out how to get Mashisu and Misao to get married. Just drinking, having a good time. Tenchi, surprisingly absent. I think he said maybe one line this whole episode. Let me look at my notes. Okay, so Ryoko's tearing up the ship. Misao is basically throwing a tantrum, going to get everybody killed. Mashisu shows up. She's been freed, so she goes onto the ship, slaps him, and he kind of snaps out of it, gets everybody to evacuate, and then Washu basically sets up this hologram where there's an explosion on the ship. Mashisu is bleeding and dying, and her and Misao, they confess their love for each other, blah, 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 blah. And then it's just like, Mashisu dies, and then Washu's like, do you want to save this woman? And he's like, yeah, I do. It's like, okay, it was just a hologram, she's fine. Also, silly but funny. Like, I didn't mind that really either, because that's just like a funny gag. And that's the episode. Most of this episode is Misao freaking out because Ryoko is attacking his ship. Mashisu freaking out because people have realized that she is in love with Misao. There is one funny joke about this where the three guys that Mashisu brought with her to attack everybody, when I think it's Mihoshi says out loud that Mashisu is in love with Misao, all three of those guys are like, my wife said something like that. I didn't believe her. And then, yeah, my wife said that too. My wife also said that. That's funny. There's a lot of funny comedy in this. The biggest issue for me is setting up a cliffhanger in the last episode and then abandoning it completely, right? A cutaway gag where it's like, oh, here are all these imposing people coming to fight us, and they're instantly defeated. That could work if the first chunk of an episode was setting them up. In the middle of the episode, oh, we're gonna fight, and then the conclusion is, oh yeah, we just beat them. Setting it up as a cliffhanger sucks. The Misao Mashisu stuff, I don't have a problem with it on its own. My biggest issue is these OVAs are short. We get, 6 episodes per. So wasting an episode on this, it's just that. It feels like a waste. If each season of Tenchi Muyo Ryo-Ohki was 12 episodes, having one episode about Mihoshi's brother, not a big deal. I wouldn't mind it at all. But it feels like we're wasting limited time with this episode. So it's just very unfortunate. There's stuff that I liked about this episode. Some of the comedy was good. But it's a bit frustrating, right? And alright, that's the most of the episode. Then we get the end credits, and then we get an after credits scene. And this is where the finale is set up, because next episode is supposed to be the finale, even though they released a special 7th episode later on, where everybody's just hanging out in the house, business as usual. Washu is standing next to Noike, and she looks at Noike and is like, alright, hey, who are you? Noike is confused, and Washu basically just says, I'm not talking to you, Noike, I'm talking to the person who is watching through your eyes. Who are you? We see her eyes kind of glaze over, and then we see just like a giant beam come from space and hit the house, or not the house, but like the area, right? Washu yells to Tenchi, like, you gotta get out of there. Another beam comes, hits, end the episode with Tenchi in space, protected by his light hawk wings, showing just a massive chunk of the Earth missing. Great. That's a great cliffhanger. And the shot of, like, the Earth blown, like, a huge chunk of it blown off as Tenchi just sort of stares at it. Great shot. Great ending for an overall not great episode. Again, a lot of this stuff could work if done better. The skipping over the fights after setting them up to be something really important, that could have been funny if done better. Specifically not as a cliffhanger between episodes. The Misao and Mashisu stuff could have been fine if we had more episodes to work with, and like a little one-off story about side characters didn't just feel like a waste of limited time. Overall, episode was fine. One of the weakest of the season, because like Mashisu and Misao, again, are just side characters. Like, this whole episode doesn't feel like it's moving much forward until the very ending. So overall, not my favorite episode. Could have used a little bit of work to make it a bit better. But anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.